folks. Welcome back to another episode of Unfinished Business Deep Dive. I'm your host, Jeff Galashaw, and with me, as always, is co-host Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
I used to like Twinkies before they changed the recipe.
Okay. This week, we are talking about to me, an underrated classic film called To Die For from 1995, directed by Gus Van Sant of Drugstore Cowboy, Good Will Hunting, My Own Private Idaho fame, and written by the greatest comedy, or one of the greatest comedy writers ever known, the late Buck Henry, who helped create Get Smart and was also a writer on wrote The Graduate and the Goldie Hawn movie Protocol. And I know that was a weird addition in there, but he also wrote What's Up, Doc, a great Barbra Streisand screwball comedy. Let's see, what else do I have written for him? Look, he's just
cameo in Grumpy Old Men.
No, he was old. He also wrote Owl and the Pussycat, Candy, the infamous bomb, Catch 22. He's a noted actor. He guest starred on all sorts of shows and movies. Will and Grace, but who didn't? He has a supporting role in this movie, To Die For. The only time I've ever seen him be violent on screen, actually. But yeah. Also, this is based on the book by Joyce Maynard, which I actually read, but years ago. I didn't read it for the show. Sorry, I'm not that dedicated, folks. I do need my free time sometimes. Cinematographer Eric Allen Edwards, and edited by Curtis Clayton. Okay. When this film was first announced, I was really looking forward to it. I liked the cast, even though I was like, Nicole Kidman, really? Because at the time, I did remember the Pamela Smart case. Where basically, as the plot of this film, where she was, the Pamela Smart was a teacher who was working with high school kids and supposedly started an affair and hired them to kill her husband. In this film, the main character is a wannabe news reporter who is achieving fame kind of as a weather woman. And she sees this as her ultimate goal, and her husband is holding her back because he wants her to be more of a traditional, housewife and have kids. And this newscasting is more of a hobby. So she decides to try and do a new special on teenagers and picks, the worst of the runt to do a documentary on, but they're easily influenced. They come from the poor side of tracks, not that smart. And she eventually manages to seduce them to kill her husband. And this is all played very satirical, but yet dramatic. I remember going to see this film in theaters and being just blown away. If by anybody else, I was impressed by Nicole Kidman as an actress, but Ileana Douglas, who plays Matt Dillon's sister, so Nicole Kidman's sister-in-law, I absolutely love her in this film. She should have been nominated for a Best Supporting Actress in this, as Alison Folland as one of the teenagers should have. It's also noteworthy because this was one of the first roles where previously Leaf Phoenix, now going by Joaquin Phoenix, really made his presence known. And he was actually chosen over some bigger names at the time, like Johnny Galecki, for this role. This is our first real appearance of Casey Affleck in anything, brother of Ben and a friend of Matt Damon. And actually, he's also the person who let Gus Van Sant see the script of Good Will Hunting that Gus Van Sant would eventually direct and actually win acclaim for all around everybody on that. But we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about this. The interesting thing is there's only this is the only time I've really seen at that time Nicole Kidman in down and dirty sex scenes that were kind of shocking at the time because like this is Cruz's wife, seeing her on screen. It's like you start wondering, like, is she like that with him?
So you had Malice.
Oh yeah, no, I hadn't seen Malice at the time, so this was my introduction to her being dirty. But I really like this because to me, this is also one of Gus Van Sant's first mainstream films. Because his films before this were more independent with up and coming stars, and Nicole Kidman was more of an established star, and I know that Meg Ryan was originally attached until she dropped out last minute, but there was such a long list of other people who were considered for this role, but somehow Nicole Kidman got it. And I think this was really the beginning of where her career, her big screen career as a lead actress took off, even though she was good, like you said, in Malice, which I eventually saw. And what was, I guess, how did you first hear or see To Die For?
I remember the previews because of all the hype around Nicole Kidman's performance. Up until that time, I only knew her as, yes, Mrs. Tom Cruise and doing Days of Thunder and Far and Away. And then there were the supporting roles. And as I mentioned, Malice, My Life with Michael Keaton, another movie called Billy Bathgate, where she also kind of got a little down and dirty in that too. So she'd been around, but she really, and Dead Calm, I think, was like her first big American film. But up until that point, she pretty much was in Cruise's shadow. And of course, there was Batman Forever. That was where, like, oh, yeah, she's really sexy in that one. But the least said about Batman Forever, the better. Anyway, the trailers, I remember all the hype around her performance, and it shows. I didn't get to see the movie until it was on cable about a year later. And you could just tell this was the first step in the complete change in direction for her career before she won the Oscar. In fact, many people thought she was actually robbed of the Oscar. Even Sean Penn wrote a letter to her and said that she should have gotten recognized for that performance. And I think she had won a Golden Globe or won a couple of awards for the film. But it really is something where this was maybe the first time you didn't see. Actually, let me take that back. You did see her play a villain in Malice as part of the movie's overall twist, but to see her all throughout play like a devious narcissist who has these big aspirations and lives with a husband that wants the simplicity of a family and just a corner store job, and she wants none of that. And then, like you said, the Pamela Smart element of the story, it just really shows like this woman will do anything it takes to be famous, to get her 15 minutes, and then for things to go wrong. When I think about this movie, yes, I do think about it as Gus Van Sant's first major mainstream movie. I also think about there's a lot of personal connections I have with this film, weirdly enough. Dan Hedaya, who plays Matt Dillon's father, he actually went to elementary school with my uncle back in the day. Ileana Douglas is actually a follower of the Cinephiles. Please come on our show if you're watching this, Ileana Douglas. And Allison Fonlin, currently, like, she was acting up until a point, and then she got into filmmaking. But now she's actually a professor at my alma mater, at Emerson College. So she's actually a teacher now and still working there the last I checked. So there's like all these little connections I have with this film. This is pretty quite remarkable. But without a doubt, this is the movie that made her career. I also think it's the movie that got people to notice Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Because, yeah, same thing. He was in the shadow of his late brother River. Before that, he was credited as Leaf Phoenix. He was a child actor. But this is the one where, like, now he was kind of a grown young man that people were looking at, and just there's the look, but then there's the personality of this kind of trailer park trash kid who really just has this obsession with this woman that he'll do anything for her, even kill her husband, and then still had that obsession after the fact that she wants nothing to do with him. This is what I think set him apart and, skyrocketed his career from that point forward.
Yeah, because I just remember thinking he is so odd looking when I watched this movie the first time because I was like, does anybody actually think he's cute? Because I just thought he looked so creepy in this film, and I was just like, I don't know if that's acting or if that's just who he is. Because again, we knew him as child actor Lee Phoenix, so like him being Joaquin Phoenix, I honestly at the time thought, damn, River Phoenix had another brother who never acted before named Joaquin.
I think it was a little bit of both, but Alison Fonlin definitely was acting. I think I think it was her first role, from what I understand. So it was kind of like with Brad Renfro and The Client; they just kind of found her. But in the other movies that she's done, she is nothing like that. She actually plays a lot more smarter, more attractive girls than what she plays in this film.
Yeah, even in like Boys Don't Cry, where she
Yeah.
has a small role. But I think everybody was just hitting on the right pistons in this movie.
Kurtwood
I mean,
Smith.
and now, half the cast is Oscar winners now.
Yep.
You have Joaquin Phoenix, Nicole Kidman, Casey Affleck.
Yep.
My thing with this film, I also like that even in the Midwest, there's bigger racism to be found worldwide, but the stereotypes of Italians in this movie that they keep trying to hammer, like, no, not all Italians are like that. But then the twist ending is like, no, they are, And I like any film where David Cronenberg is an Italian assassin. I'm like, seriously?
He's got that odd look about him.
Well, you can't tell. You're not like, that's definitely a Canadian with him.
Canadian and Italian.
And he's not even wearing his glasses in this.
No.
And I like that we don't really ever see violence in this film. We always see aftermath of it, especially, in the, spoiler alert, it's a deep dive, how basically they just put her under ice, whole thing that Ileana Douglas skates on at the end. As I also like that her character is just an ice skater, a professional ice skater. That's not something you see in the normal movies. I like Dan Hedaya in this. Kurtwood Smith as an upper crust dad, suburban dad, and Holland Taylor.
Playing mom.
She's perfectly cast in this movie, even though they don't have that much to do. Even though, I'll never love anybody as much as you, Daddy. That was like a weird little weirdness in that scene at the wedding.
The character, right?
I guess, but it felt weird. Just like George Segal's cameo in this movie.
Yeah.
And Wayne Knight's in it. But I also like that it kind of goes for that mockumentary feel during the first half of the film, and then it kind of becomes its own story or more of a film than it was before. To me, this film is just so inventive. It's a film I don't understand why more people don't talk about, because it could have easily just been a TV movie version of this story. But they found a way to bring the humor, but also the human side to it out. And it's, no offense to Matt Dillon, it's the only time I've seen him play vulnerable in a movie, at least one that I've seen. And I like Matt Dillon. So it's like, I don't think I would get that same thing. Let's say, he's a good actor, but I don't think if Andrew McCarthy played the role, I'd have the same sympathy.
Yeah, no, I like the fact that even as an audience member, you feel for his family when he's killed, but I don't feel much for him, because especially when you have that scene where he's sitting in front of her, he's trying to tell her basically to give up her dreams and just be a housewife, go work for him at the restaurant. Like, you're a fucking scumbag, dude. Like, you're not even being a supportive husband. And yet, he gets his comeuppance for that. And you still feel like, okay, she's got to get her comeuppance now. So there's something very complex about that I think makes this movie stand out. And another thing we haven't talked about yet, but the Danny Elfman score is very good. It feels like at times it was almost like the almost the early version of the Men in Black score more than his Tim Burton collaborations. It feels like it's got kind of those touches and the way it builds up certain scenes, especially when the police are starting to close in on Joaquin Phoenix and his friends. There's definitely like that kind of kookiness about the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's not as I feel like it is a warm up, but it's not as grand or sensationalistic as the Men in Black soundtrack. But what I did like was, we know they come from bad backgrounds, but we really don't see really how bad it is until they're starting to get arrested.
Yeah.
That's when we actually see like how bad their home life kind of is. And realistically, how none of their parents are shocked that they're getting arrested either.
They're like the kids in Over the Edge, which also had Matt Dillon. It's just the bunch of wasteland kids doing nothing except just trying to have a good time and fuck around.
Yeah, but at least in that movie, the parents were kind of more middle class and trying to save their kids. These parents just don't seem like they give a shit.
Yeah, they're trash.
So it was just like, and again, Buck Henry and his little supporting role as the bow tie teacher, who surprisingly can kick ass, even though we never actually see him. He does Chuck Norris again, where we see the aftermath, but never the punches thrown. Let's see, what else did I write? Okay, so people who were up for the role of Jimmy in Matt Dillon's role: Vincent Gallo, and
creepy
Jason Gedrick.
Was he heavy at that point?
No, this was like Cat Squad.
I don't think he would have worked.
I think he could have worked if this was the TV movie version at the time. And Chris Isaac.
He's too likable.
I don't know. Have you seen him in his later movies? He seems like he can play a scumbag very easily sometimes. Viggo Mortensen.
Viggo Mortensen?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, he could have done it. I could see him do it.
See, my thing would have been, at the time, I would have been, who? I would have been, who's that? Here's the worst casting idea. Tom Sizemore.
Oh, God. No, then you would want to see him die.
Exactly. I feel like I'm supposed to have some sympathy for this character, right? Are we talking like Tom Sizemore, Passenger 57 type? Maybe then I might have some sympathy.
I should mention, too, that before To Die For was made, there was a TV movie about
with Helen Hunt.
Yes, with Helen Hunt and the kid from St. Elsewhere, who was the autistic boy. He was the one who ends up killing her husband. And Howard Hessman is one of the, I think, the lawyer or the prosecutor.
Why not? Yeah. And Adrian Pasdar was the last name on the list.
He could have done it. I could have seen him.
Well, I guess his career was taking off at that time.
Really?
Well, yeah. Well, at the time, he wasn't like, you got to keep in mind, he was an up and coming actor at the time. So it was like, at least, so he was probably on everybody's list at the time before he kind of got
up and coming when he did Near Dark. I don't think he was really as hot in 95.
I mean, people knew who he was, but it was like, this could have been a comeback for him, at least. Up for Lydia, Heather Graham, and Christy Swanson.
Hell no.
For the Joaquin Phoenix, like I said, Johnny Galecki, Adrian Grenier.
Nice, too cute.
Jeremy Davies.
Maybe.
Stephen Dorff.
I think he was too old.
And this might have worked if they didn't use Joaquin Phoenix and might have saved his career. Eddie Furlong.
Yeah, I could have seen Eddie do it.
Yeah, that could have worked.
But it would have been distracting too, because you would know, John Connor's gonna fuck everything up.
But this would have been more like him trying to be a character actor like that before and after movie with Meryl Streep and Liam Neeson, where he kills a girl and they're trying to cover up his crimes.
What about
And
Macaulay Culkin?
I think at this time, hadn't he retired from acting at this point?
But if he wanted to play like an Oscar-worthy performance,
He would have been very pale.
yeah, well, the scenes with him and Nicole Kidman would be weird.
And not to mention, he definitely would have needed Casey Affleck to help him overpower Matt Dillon. Macaulay Culkin ain't doing that alone.
No.
It just makes me wonder if Macaulay Culkin would have been in this movie, would they cast Seth Green? So it'd be like how they were in Party Monster.
Yeah, probably.
It'd be like, you got killed by the shortest assassins ever. If they would have been in this movie. I mean, why not? They killed somebody in Party Monster. Well, more Macaulay did. Seth slept through it. Up for this is again supposedly up for Ileana Douglas's role, Sandra Bullock and Ellen DeGeneres and Janine Garofalo.
Yeah, I could see it.
Jamie Gertz.
No, too cute.
Terry Hatcher.
Way too cute.
Catherine Keener.
I think she was a little too old for it.
At that time?
Yeah, she had, like, Ileana Douglas was a lot younger.
Laura San Giacomo.
Maybe.
Meg Tilly. And
no. Well, yeah, I can't see.
And Jennifer Tilly. And
then it would just get weird.
And for the people who were considered after Meg Ryan, Michelle Pfeiffer, she's considered for everything at that time. Uma Thurman, Brooke Shields, another one who's always comes up a lot on 90s casting list, Daryl Hannah, and
maybe, I don't know.
Holly Hunter, who I will say too old, and
not seductive enough.
Jennifer Jason Leigh.
She probably would play a real Pamela Smart good.
Tatum O'Neal.
Well, she was done by that point. I don't think Hollywood was hiring her.
Mary Louise Parker.
Maybe, yeah, I could see her do it.
The one I wouldn't have cast, Sarah Jessica Parker.
I could see the thought in that, but then I don't know.
Melanie Griffith.
Well, that would have been typical of her at that time. Unexpected.
It could have been her, Cecil B. Demented. Jodie Foster.
No.
Bridget Fonda.
Yeah, I could see Bridget Fonda do it at the time.
This had to have been after Addams Family Values. Joan Cusack.
No.
She was on the list.
No.
Patricia Arquette, who almost took it.
Yeah, I could see her do it. Yeah.
I don't know if at the time we really got her as a more a person who could do comedy or create a comedic character, though. Now we know she could do it, but at the time, have you seen Goodbye Lover with her and Ellen DeGeneres? I don't know. That's why I'd be like, she's definitely got the looks, but I don't know if she would have had, the satirical thing down. And last, Jennifer Connelly.
That could have been interesting.
Exactly. Like, definitely if it was made today, yes. I don't know if at the time was she in that place where it would have worked. And so that is pretty much all the notes, though I do have a special note that since I read the novelization or the novel before it became a movie, there is an excerpt where Suzanne does say she hopes that if they ever make a movie of her life, Tom Cruise's wife plays me. And so, it all came full circle eventually. Is there anything else you'd like to say about To Die For?
No, I think it's a very good film. And again, one of her best performances for Nicole Kidman's career.
I think it's a very underrated film. I think it showed Hollywood that Gus Van Sant can kind of do normal studio films while having like putting his personal stamp on a project. I think this was like one of the last things Buck Henry wrote, you know.
His last good movie, I think.
Well, I mean, we're not going to talk about like the Get Smart TV movies. So, but you know, I love this film. This is like one of my personal favorite films of all time. You know, I just love it for its satire, its dark comedy elements, its cast, eclectic, you know, at the time, half of them were unknown. Now, you know, they're all well known, and even like kind of classical actors in this, like again, Dan Hedaya, you know, Kurtwood Smith, Holland Taylor, and they don't really have much to do in the film, but it's kind of like, you know, I don't know, almost like a sitcom-esque family in a movie, but made all the more real. I would say more on Matt Dillon's family side, they're a little more human and a little more dramatic characters, whereas on Nicole Kidman's side, they still kind of feel, I guess, how they're supposed to feel, like distant and like her character kind of fake. So it works for that there. And, you know, all this is happening while they're being interviewed on some kind of like, I guess, Jenny Jones or Oprah-ish talk show.
I don't think we ever really find out where they're being interviewed, right?
No, we just see them on stage and like them each commenting, and then we'll cut back to like footage of, I guess, this mockumentary that whoever is making, because we also never find out who's behind that. We just know that she takes off her mic because she's supposed to have a meeting with some television producer, and that's the last we ever see of her on camera. But I also like that element that while she's telling the camera what she wants it to know, we actually see what really, I guess, happened, you know. So I thought that was also inventive. So that's why I say it's an overall, it's a well-rounded movie that I think a lot of people should discover and pay more attention to if they can.
Yeah.
You know, this was before Nicole Kidman seemed to accept any and everything. It was really the Hollywood it girl for lead actresses, and then getting burned out by it. This was probably the movie that helped Illeana Douglas not only get Grace of My Heart, but probably also helped Grace of My Heart get made, because she was considered a name after this. And then for a while in all these romantic comedies, she was like the best friend, you know. I'm a huge Illeana Douglas fan. You know, I read her articles, you know, and I just like the fact that she's also a really big, you know, film history fan. So she's always going to be cool. But that ends our business with this deep dive of To Die For. And again, hopefully all of you go check this movie out. Please, in the future, comment. Let us know what you think of this movie. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Just let us know, other than subscribing. And
yeah, definitely subscribe.
So for this week, we bid you adieu. And again, happy holidays.